Hello, it's Holistic Travel Nurse Naomi. In this episode, I have a holistic practitioner, a nutritional practitioner, Jessica Tai. If you've not checked out her podcast, you're going to. She has a ton of information that I kind of binged, listened to a whole bunch of your podcasts, and is very, very smart in helping people with their nutrition and getting people into ketosis and helping people change their life from the inside out. Is right. That's what a nutrition person does, because that's what food is medicine does to us. So, Jessica, tell me the backstory of how you got into that whole being a nutritional practitioner.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Naomi. I appreciate it. I get asked this question all the time, and there's so many. I think there were so many different paths that got me to a nutritional therapist place where I am now, that it's hard to pinpoint one thing that happened that got me here. But we have 5 children, and my oldest is just about to turn 18, and he had a lot of medical issues as a baby, and had, kind of throughout his life, he's had issues. So that always had me very interested from that point in just health and nutrition and what you can do. And I've had a lot of missteps along the way. I've done pretty much every way of eating you can imagine, and have tried my family on about everything. And so we kind of went through that route. And then fast forward many, many years later, and my youngest daughter now is 7. And we adopted her as a 2.5-year-old from China. And she came with, she was on the special needs list. So we knew that she had a lot of challenges that we needed to overcome. She needed some surgeries and things like that. But we didn't realize kind of the whole breadth of what she was dealing with. And it quickly became apparent to me that we were really going to have to dial in her nutrition, and that she really was lacking any kind of good nutrition prior to coming home to us. So I immediately just kind of started attacking that and getting her healthy, just getting vibrancy in her little body. And she also, part of our journey with her is we found out that she is epileptic. She has grand mal seizures that land her in the intensive care unit every time on a ventilator. So they're a big deal for her. And so of course, there's medication they can put her on, but I also, before finding this out, we had already been kind of experimenting in keto. I had been paleo for a long time, and then had kind of started experimenting a little bit with keto and fasting, and with my older son with some of his issues. And then now here we have my daughter that's just been, we've just been told that she is now diagnosed epileptic, and at 5, she was diagnosed epileptic. So we started exploring keto even further. And I decided, this is going to be a really great way to help her with the seizures and keeping them at bay. So in 2 years, she's only had 2 of them. And so I feel like that's a win. We've been able to, kind of keep those at bay and keep her going strong. So she's on a very strict ketogenic diet, and she loves it. She has no complaints whatsoever. So kind of figuring all of that stuff out, and just kind of as that was going, several years ago, I started doing nutritional coaching for friends, family, is kind of how it started out. And then as word got out, I had started by kind of working with my son and getting his health good. And then working with myself, I had all kinds of ailments that I was able to heal through my lifestyle and my nutrition. And people started taking notice, and they were like, what are you doing? At the time, I was like 35, 36 years old, and truly looked and felt better than maybe I had my whole life that I could remember. Certainly since I had started having babies I was about 24 when my first one was born. So, people started taking notice and wanted to know what I was doing. So I began coaching people that way. And we realized that I really knew a lot, because I had done so much research for my children and doing that. And my mom is a nurse as well, so I'd learned a lot growing up with her. And And that's just kind of how it unfolded. And I just decided that I really wanted some type of education. I had not gone to school for a degree in dietetics or nutrition. And so at my age and this kind of chapter in life, I thought, well, I don't know that I really want to go back to college, but maybe there's a program I could look into that would just give me a little more education and help me with a little more formal understanding of everything. And I looked into several programs, and the one that I landed on was through the Nutritional Therapy Association, which you can get certified as a nutritional therapy consultant, which just does a lot of nutritional advice and working with people on lifestyle, or a nutritional therapy practitioner. And the difference is the practitioner can actually do hands-on functional evaluations. We do body work when we are working with clients to kind of help figure out what systems need the most support and where we need to start. So that was a very intense program. I loved it. I was actually in there with a registered dietitian who told us that going through college to get her RD was easier than this year that she had spent in getting the certification as an NTP. So that meant a lot to me, because I was like, wow, I don't know, am I missing anything? But I did know that if I had gone back to get any kind of nutrition education through college, that I did not want to go back to get an RD because I did not want to be governed by our USDA.
Oh yeah.
And so I realized straight away that was not for me, because I knew I wouldn't stick to what they were telling people to do, and I would likely lose my license that I went to all that trouble to get. So that was off the table from day one for me. So that's the long-winded story of how I got to kind of where I am now.
Oh, totally get it. I have known other dietitians that sort of try to start their own practice because they don't want to follow along the American, whatever they have to.
Yes.
Because I still work in the hospital system, and it's true, we give people the worst foods for healing in the hospital food, and then we give them the worst advice. I hear it from, the dietitians and stuff. But my job and the patient population I already have, they have to follow such a strict diet because most of my patients are chronic renal, and that is such a hard, strict diet to follow. And most of them aren't very compliant. But by that time, and I would rather, my why is the same thing as you, is, well, I would rather teach people how to prevent them from kidney failure, prevent them from heart disease, prevent them nutritional and holistically, not in every single aspect of their life. We don't look at people as a whole. We separate them in body systems.
Yes.
And so that's the problem with our Western society.
Yeah. Well, it's a difference between sick care and well care, right? Like well-being, like we practice sick care. So we assess the patient per individual body system rather than looking at it as a holistic person, and preventative care and just keeping them well and just their overall well-being. We don't, in this country, we just don't look at it like that. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So how long you been doing keto?
So I've been keto about, I guess coming up on 3 years now, because I started my podcast, I think about 2.5 years ago, and I was keto prior to starting that. So it's got to be close to 3 years. I guess it'll be 3 years in about 2.5, I guess. It'll be 3 years, I think, the beginning of this coming year. So yeah, just a few months away.
Wow. And did you how long, because it has become a huge talking point. Because I think Atkins had a part of it, but he didn't really have it all the way down when, but I read a couple books just recently about healing your teeth. And I don't know if you've heard of Weston Price.
Yeah. When we went through our NTA training, we are a large part of the education we get is in regards to Weston A. Price and everything that he did, all the different studies that he ran. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. I plan to get his book actually. And then what kind of, we've decided to do it for my husband's sake. And I was like, okay, we'll do keto. because we were already living a little bit of a paleo lifestyle. And I'm like, well, let's just see what this is about. Now, do you think that when it comes to people like, because you've done everything you said, so have you been a vegan?
I have. Yeah, I was a vegan, a pretty strict vegan, like mostly raw vegan for at least a year. Maybe a little bit more than a year, but we'll say a year. I've kind of blacked it out.
Wow. So you really have done like, and then you've done paleo. You really have done almost every spectrum of.
I was vegetarian for a long time, and then transitioned to vegan, and then kind of went through a health crisis after years of vegetarian veganism, and kind of went through a health crisis. And I thought, I'll tell you what the turning point for me was, is I went into my, I had been feeling terrible. I was so tired and everything hurt. And I was in my 30s and I thought, this is just crazy. Like I should not feel like this. And had this bloat, like all the time I felt like I was bloated, and I didn't want it to come off like I was being superficial and just worried about my looks. But when I went into the doctor, I went to my OBGYN and I said, during that yearly appointment, and I said, I just feel terrible. I feel like I've never lost the weight after my third son. Mm-hmm. And I had been vegetarian and or vegan through that time period, and worked out like a mad woman. I mean, I was in the gym, which now looking back, I definitely understand what was happening to myself, but but I thought, I'm working out, I'm eating all this great food. Like, what is happening to me? Why does everything hurt? Why am I bloated all the time? Why do I have no energy? And retrospect, of course I know why, but the flipping point for me was when we sat down with all of my blood results. I had blood tests done to figure out what's going on. I was very low in vitamin D. Not surprising, because of course I followed all of the guidelines that I should be slathering SPF 50 or more on everything, never get any sun exposure, just keep everything covered. I'm light skin, light eyes. My mother has had, skin cancer. So I was just totally fearful of that, and figured that I was going to end up with it too. So I had all this, was very much on board with that. And then of course I'm not eating any animal meats or getting, any organ meats or any kind of good nutrition that way. I'm eating just plant foods and things that are made in factories that will substitute for the burgers that I won't eat and the pork that I won't eat. And like, it's madness to me now that I talk it out loud and think about the way I used to do it, thinking that that was healthy. So my carbohydrates, I can't even imagine, through the roof, right? I mean, it was just, there's no wonder I couldn't get rid of, no wonder I felt bloated all the time and fatigued. But, and I was a grazer, right? Like I ate just like my trainer told me I needed to eat 6 small meals a day. So boy, I did. I all the time I was feeding my face and, all of this craziness. And when we looked at those test results, she looked at me and said, well, it looks like you're going to need to lay off the red meat. Your cholesterol's high. And I said, what? That doesn't make sense. I don't even eat red meat. I was like, this is like, what? And she's like, well, are you sure you're not eating red meat? Like she was like convinced that if my cholesterol was high, I must be eating red meat and I must be lying to her so I'm trying to explain to her, I am a vegan. Like I'm not eating red meat. Like how is that possible that my cholesterol is high? Well, now I understand that all the carbohydrates I was eating was jacking my cholesterol up. I was completely inflamed. That's why I was swollen. I was bloated all the time. My joints hurt. I had major hip flexor issues, knee issues, just joint pain everywhere. It was awful. And when I left that meeting, I just remember thinking, this is so wrong. It's so wrong. There's no way, like I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm eating. How can this be right? How can these test results be right? How can she tell me not to eat red meat? I'm not even eating red meat. Like something's got to give. And that's kind of, that's when I kind of started on the healing journey for myself and started changing the way I was eating. I moved to paleo at that time, and things just started turning around. And so anyway, that's kind of.
You learned that gluten is your enemy. Probably
I did.
Like I did.
Yes, I did. That helped a lot. And for me, as a nutritionist, I don't believe that there's one way for everybody to eat. For me, keto was, that was the icing on the cake. So paleo helped a lot, and I got a lot of things under control, but I still had a lot of joint pain, and I was still kind of dealing with that. And I really believe it was the grains and the lectins. Like, I just can't handle them. Apparently, it's just, I need to stay low carb. And so when I really dove into keto, I mean, it wasn't more than a few days. All of the joint pain was gone. It was incredible. Like, I didn't even believe that that's what was doing it. I just was like, this must just be some weird coincidence, but I still have no joint pain, none of the hip flexor issues. When I was going to a physical therapist for the pain, it was so bad. I could barely sleep at night. I've had no hip flexor issues. I have no knee issues anymore, no ankle issues, none of that stuff. It's all gone.
Interesting. That's so funny. We've kind of transitioned into the keto, and I kind of had the keto flu. But I'm on a really good whole food supplement. But what I was taking the vegan form and not the regular form for my fish oil. And I've had a whole bunch of joint pain. I've had to switch back because it was for a month. So it's kind of built up where I lost my DHA, my EPA, and those are so vital to inflammation, and they respond different in each person, but I needed those so bad.
Yeah.
And so at first, my first few days of keto sucked.
Yeah.
And so they didn't help at all with any of that. And then I took a look back, and I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing nutrition wise? And I realized my supplements, I was messing around with them some. And so I've gone back off my vegan omegas and back to the fish oil omegas. And I'm going to probably do an episode just on that, because people don't get enough of those in their diet.
Yes.
You can't manufacture it. Like, we have some vitamins that our bacteria in our gut, thankfully, will manufacture for us, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of them that we don't. Our body's dependent on what we take in, and it's running, but sometimes it's not running that efficiently if we don't have the right nutrients.
Yeah, that's a big one that I see a lot in my client population too, is omegas are almost always people are deficient in essential fatty acids. It's a really big problem. And I would say another big one that I see a lot is B vitamins. And again, same reason, they're water soluble. We have to replenish those every day. If we're not eating a good balanced diet, we don't have good nutrition, or we can't digest what we're eating, we can't pull those vitamins out. So those are both big issues.
Yeah, I've did the same thing. And then I'm just curious about collagen, because the collagen thing comes in big play with keto. And as we age, we actually need to increase getting collagen in? Because I mean, you're reading some of the books about paleo, because I was more paleo lifestyle too. And what I've read and what we talked about is that, so many years ago, we ate such different foods than we're eating now. And so you see that, I mean, when it comes to eating meats, we didn't have this all processed the way we deal with the chicken. We ate goat, we ate this. I mean, you know what I mean? We're not eating the same stuff. And we ate the gristles, and we got more collagen. I think that people are lacking in collagen. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, we do. And actually, as we age, we do naturally lose our collagen production goes down. We lose the ability to hold on to that collagen. We just have, as our bodies are aging, we need more because the way that our bodies are using it. So yeah, absolutely. And when, like you're talking about, we would have eaten the whole animal, right? Nose to tail. That's what they're talking about when they say nose to tail. They literally ate the whole animal. And what's interesting now is that we prize the muscle meat. And that's what we want. Like, we want a big old T-bone steak, and that's what we think is so great. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's super yummy. But when, our ancestors, they prized the organ meats. Like, the muscle meat was the last thing they would eat. They would eat the organs, they would boil the bones and make what we call today bone broth, or broth, or chicken broth, or whatever you want to call it, stock. But that's how it was made. And this is one of my passions for sure. I am a farm girl, born and raised, and we have a farm now, and we have probably about 50 animals currently. Everything. It's every farm animal you can think of, we have it. So, but one of the reasons we have our farm is it's an educational farm. So we have kids come out, we have adults, groups come out. We take our animals and we do setups for different farmers markets and things like that. We have special needs groups come out because a lot of our animals are rescues and are special needs animals. But what I'm so passionate about is teaching people where your food comes from. Because I think so many people, if you ask a kid, like, how do you get chicken broth? They might not even understand that. They probably don't even know why it's called chicken broth because they don't see chicken in that broth. So they probably just think it's a funny way that you call this broth. Or it's because it comes in chicken noodle soup. Like they think it comes from Campbell's, right? Like there's such a divorce of like where your food comes from. I mean, the average, I think this generation, my children's generation right now is probably as far divorced as we've ever seen from our food because they don't see farms. They're just not exposed to that at all. At least my generation, my mom grew up on a farm where they ate nearly everything that they ate, they grew. So I wasn't that far removed from it. And then I did grow up on a farm. While we didn't grow everything that we ate, I at least understood that. And I kind of knew how that goes. But I think like my children with if we didn't have a farm, they don't have any, their friends come over and they're blown away. Like they've never seen farm animals like this. So I think just helping people to understand like how to use the whole animal and that like chicken broth, stock, bone broth, it's made from boiling the bones, like, and the cartilage and all of that. And that's where you get your collagen, your gelatin. And that's an excellent way to get it actually, because you're also getting so many other awesome nutrients in there, all these vitamins and minerals, glutamine, and all these amino acids that the bonus with bone broth is you don't have to break any of that down. It's already broken down for you. You drink it and you can immediately assimilate all the stuff that's in bone broth, including the collagen. So ladies listening, I 100% will tell you now, if you want good nails, good hair, good skin, good joints, start drinking a mug of bone broth every day. That's all you have to do. That will be the amount of collagen that you need. And just keep doing it. Keep drinking that. And you'll be supplementing your body with what it's naturally losing as you age.
I bet you make your own bone broth.
I do. But it's not, I'll tell my clients to do it as well. And some of them are so intimidated by that, but it's really and it is intimidating at first. I will give you that. You're kind of like, oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I remember making my first batch. I'm like, I'm going to screw this up. And now looking back, I kind of chuckle at myself like you cannot screw it up. Like literally you can just start by taking a crock pot full of water. Well, first, let me back up. Take your crock pot, throw an onion, chop an onion up, throw it in there, throw in, I always put a little bit of garlic in mine. And you want to just throw in a chicken carcass. Now I usually will make mine with 2 because I like it to be really rich and full of collagen and all that. But the easiest way to do it is if your family eats rotisserie chicken from the grocery store, keep the bones of that rotisserie chicken, put them in a baggie, a Ziploc baggie, throw it in your freezer. And when we have 2, we throw them in and make our bone broth. So you just put that in the crock pot, top it with water just till it's over the bones, salt and pepper. And the key is a little bit of apple cider vinegar. So that will help to really pull all of those nutrients out of the bones and really help break all of that down and get it out. You want it out of that marrow is where it comes from. So, and you cover that and you let it simmer for 24 hours. If you need it to simmer more, you can let it simmer for 36 or 48. Like it's so easy. You put it in there and just go. And then you can drink on that. So I will actually put mine in like ball jars or mason jars, pretty good size, wide mouth ones. And I fill all of those up and I'll leave a couple in my fridge. They keep for about a week. And then I'll drink those throughout the week or use them for cooking. And the rest of them you can store in your freezer, right in those ball jars. And so then when you're ready to use one, you just take one out at a time and let it thaw on the counter and it's ready for later. So it's really easy. But if you are intimidated by that, they're available. Bone broths are available everywhere now. Just make sure, be really careful about buying them off the shelf or going to like Kroger or whatever your local grocery store is and thinking that just because it says bone broth, that it has any of those nutrients in there. because most of them do not. They are devoid of those nutrients because of the way that they are manufactured. So the best bet, I would say, is to get them out of you can find them in the freezer section of like Whole Foods, and my local Kroger has them. Walmart carries different bone broths that you can get in the freezer, and Bonafide Provisions is my favorite, and those are carried many, many places. So it's good. It's made for you. It's easy. You can get beef or chicken.
Wow, thank you. I didn't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's now that it's going into the fall season, soups are really great, and getting your crock pot or your Instapot. I have an Instapot.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way to do it. And that's why when we're sick, we probably crave. Remember, the chicken noodle soup is all the nutrients you're getting in from the bone broth. When I actually love turkey, I love turkeys. The turkey broth is probably
Yes, you can. I do too, and that is one of my favorite things to do after we've had Thanksgiving dinner. Is I take all of those bones, and the turkey bones that will last you or last us for several batches of broth, and it is so good. It's so rich. And the Instant Pot is the absolute best way to make it. That's my favorite. You can have perfectly amazing bone broth in about 2 hours versus having to let it cook so long. And people have questioned, like, is it as good to make it in the Instant Pot because you're not letting it simmer? And it is, because people have to remember the Instant Pot doesn't work by heating it up hotter. It works by pressure. It's pressure cooking. So it's not damaging the nutrients that are in there. And it's also one of the really cool things is when you take it out of the Instant Pot, you can literally take your fingers and crush the bones. I mean, it pulverizes the bones. So that all of that, I mean, it has taken everything that is of any type of value out of those bones. They're just completely worthless at that point.
That is super cool. So do you have like now, so that you've actually been keto, when you have someone who's trying to go keto, do you have any advice with the Keto Flu or making that transition? Because what I've read, because I've read a couple books now, before we dived into it, of course I had to read a book because I'm a book nerd.
You're right.
But it was like, there is like, it takes actually, almost what I read, 4 to 6 weeks almost. And you help people through that. You have something on, if they listen to your podcast, you help people through this process, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the Keto Flu is basically what is happening is there's a couple of aspects to it, but in general, you're just electrolyte depleted is what happens. So every glucose molecule is surrounded with water. So when you dump those glycogen stores and you're dump, that's why so many people say, oh my gosh, I lost 8-10 pounds immediately. It's amazing. Oh, my bloating went away, because they're losing all that water store, which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You feel better. You're losing the inflammation, the bloating, all of that's fabulous. But with that, when you dump all of that, you're dumping your sodium, your chloride, your potassium. So unfortunately, then your body doesn't have those nutrients that it needs, those electrolytes, and then you can get cramping. You can start feeling lightheaded. You can also, part of the Keto Flu is people will start feeling just very fatigued. And a big part of that is just the adaptation from your body no longer has glucose, which is what it's used to using for fuel. And so as you're trying to get it to start using fat for fuel, which it's perfectly capable of doing, but it's an entirely different enzymatic process. So most of us have been very used to using carbs. So our bodies are kind of like, we don't need to do this fat burning thing. So let's just shut this whole system off. And so it essentially does. And so then when we try to go back to it, we try to force it, then our bodies are like, whoa, we have no energy coming in. There's no fuel source. Like, I have no energy. I don't want to do anything. Like, I want you to be wiped out, lay around, we need to conserve. And so that's kind of the two parts that are playing with the Keto Flu. So you really can't do much about the fat adaptation. You just have to give it time. Your body will do it. And you have to give it time to figure that out. Once it realizes the glucose isn't coming back in, it will start switching over to using fat. So that's time. And then the electrolyte thing, you can definitely take electrolyte supplements if you want. Keto Chow, you can go on, You'll just Google Keto Chow, because their website is not a .com or a .org or even a .net. I forget what it is now, but you can Google Keto Chow. They have an electrolyte supplement and a magnesium supplement, which are fantastic. I take them with me when I travel because when you are keto, you just don't hold on to all of that water and stuff anyway. So you can pretty easily become dehydrated. So I travel with those, but you can just put those drops in water. They're tasteless, very simple to keep your electrolytes up, and you can avoid the keto flu. Another excellent way to avoid it, and the way that I recommend my clients do so, is bone broth. So I kind of joke, I'm like the bone broth queen. It's like fix every ailment. But again, you can get all of your electrolytes in bone broth.
Yeah.
And so if you just sip on that, you can very well avoid the keto flu as well. It also doesn't hurt if you want to take a magnesium supplement, or even just sea salt. I like Redmond's real salt out of Utah. But if you just take a pinch of that and put it directly on your tongue a couple times a day, that will probably also keep you from experiencing those crampings and the kind of electrolyte depletion.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for all the tips.
Yeah.
We've kind of passed the keto flu in our house, and like I got more of it. My husband didn't. So, but we're doing keto for for different reasons. And we just made him do a kidney cleanse, a 21-day kidney cleanse.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're transitioning, and we did some bone broth. I did some bone broth with the kidney cleanse. And then, and juicing. It was a whole protocol with herbs and oils and things we did to get those kidneys punch back working better. And I'll talk more on it. Him and I are going to talk more on it. We did really well with that. And then I told him, because I think that everyone that is insulin resistant or a type 2 should be doing a paleo lifestyle. This is just my opinion. Or a low carb diet of some sort. I do have a friend who's type 1 and she's vegan and she keeps her A1C really, really low, which is great, but it's a lot of work. But if we would just train people opposite of what the American diabetes said, opposite of the American heart said, and said, hey, this will save the things that could happen. It's the long-term effects of having insulin resistance, or, people can have be that borderline, they're saying, but it's more of an insulin issue and a blood sugar issue. And it's a slow damaging thing in the background, and we don't address it. And unfortunately, our medical doctors, a lot of them won't address it unless you see a functional medicine practitioner, is what I tell everyone. They should be seeing some kind of functional medicine practitioner, or a naturopath or something like that, because you just won't be addressing the issues. You'll be throwing pills at the issue, and it doesn't solve it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I actually interviewed the founder of Catalina Crunch cereal yesterday for my podcast. Krishna is his name, and he's a type 1 diabetic. And the reason he kind of got into this whole keto lifestyle was he was actually diagnosed diabetic and epileptic around the same time. Yeah, so he got this double whammy, and his endocrinologist that he was seeing at the time, I guess was kind of had some reservations about keto. And then his neurologist was like, I think you should try this. I've heard great things about the keto diet for seizure control and all this kind of thing. And so then he went back to his doctor, talking about the type 1 diabetes. And the doctor's like, well, I don't really know that much about it, because that's the unfortunate truth, is that I don't think doctors are malicious on purpose about this. They just don't know. They're not educated. And unfortunately, again, I feel in this country, we have been taught to believe if he wears a white coat, he knows everything, and we should listen to them. They know it all. They're like second only to God, right? Yeah. And that's just so wrong. They're not nutritionists. They're not trained in nutrition at all. Most of them have had zero nutrition information. And so, and where I do get upset and do blame doctors is when they pretend that they do know.
Yep.
And they give out advice based on what they've heard in the media and whatever else. Because that's just wrong. I mean, I think that should be malpractice. If you don't know what you're talking about, just say, I don't know. Let me refer you to a nutritionist or somebody that, could better. But this particular doctor did say, well, I don't really know. I've heard about ketoacidosis. I'm a little nervous about that for you. Let me look into it. You look into it, and then we'll figure it out. So he did look into it, and then they were like, this is what I'm going to do. And he has to take very little insulin. Because he said to him, he's just like, it doesn't make any sense. They give me this pamphlet and tells me that the more carbs you eat, you just have to cover it up with the insulin. You got to take this insulin shot.
But we heard.
Right. And he said, but I'm reading this pamphlet and I'm thinking, but it doesn't say anywhere that if I eat less carbs, I won't have to take as much insulin. And so he's like, it just seemed to me like it just made total sense. I couldn't understand, why didn't anybody tell me don't eat more carbs? He said, so I asked the question, can I just not eat so many carbs? If I just don't eat them, is that better? And like, well, that's okay. Or if you eat them, just give yourself more insulin. And it's just ludicrous to me, because I think it's also crazy because our bodies are so amazingly designed. And when we eat food in our body, our pancreas releases insulin. It is releasing exactly what we need until we are broken. But the way we are supposed to function, the way we are made to function, is it does exactly what we need. When we try to do that, we cannot figure out how to balance that right. Like, it's such an intricate thing. It's such an intricate dance of hormones, not just insulin, but all these other systems. So when you're type 1 and you have to inject insulin because you're not making insulin, it's so easy. That's why it's so dangerous, because it's so easy to go way too far the other direction, because it's such a minuscule amount one way or the other. And there's no way for us to know that. There's no way. We just can guess, do the best we can do. Well, this worked last time. This is what I think I need to take, whatever. So it just seems to me like, people, why are doctors and is the Diabetes Association not telling people, eat as few carbs as possible, so you don't have to get on that roller coaster.
Yep.
And you don't have to damage other organs because you've got sky high insulin, or your blood sugar's dropping, because that's a problem. Like, I don't think people understand too what and how important it is that our blood sugar stay stable. Like, it is damaging to us for it to go up too high or down too low. Like, that's a serious issue. And people just think, well, it's no big deal. I'll just get some more insulin. You'll be fine. Or, eat some more carbs, bring it back up, some more.
Or I'll take this drug, or I'll take that drug.
Yes. And it's just the wrong way. So
yeah,
anyway, but it was a very interesting story where he's like, look, I'm great. And so he actually started this company, Catalina Crunch, which is a low carb, sugar-free cereal, because of his love of cereal. And he's like, I didn't want to give it up. So he started making them in his kitchen. It became very popular with friends and family. And now he's got this and it's really good. My kids love it.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard of it. So you're gonna have to send me the link on that.
Yes.
I've never heard it. Well, I just thank you so much for being on here and educating. I'm going to let people know that they can, if they want to learn more about the keto lifestyle, you have a podcast, plus you have training that you do, and you have education that you put people through. And so I will have that all in the show notes so people can explore that. It's not for everybody, but it is for certain people will see a big help with it. And so if that is something that you're looking into for your own health, then, check out Jessica. And Jessica, I thank you so much for being on the podcast and this channel, just, sharing your wisdom. Your podcast, I've really liked it. You do have some great other interviewers on your podcast too. Like, never heard of that. And you really, when you're researching, you kind of go everywhere and read a lot of stuff like I do, and connect with certain people. So thanks so much for being on the cast and just, sharing. And we can tell through your heart that you really care and you're passionate about, helping somebody else. It's really great what it's done for your daughter, and it's really great what it's done for your son. That's just, there are some people out there that really, really need to know. And the only way they're going to hit it nowadays is us speaking up. So I'm glad that you're on the channel and you have your own podcast and you're speaking out and telling people, giving them the tips and tricks every single day of, one little thing that can help with their health. So, thank you so much for being on the channel.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and I'm so appreciative to you as well for everything that you're doing in the community too.
I'm going to hit stop.